And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, if I were to say the words Cecily Meyer Cruz and Meatloaf, you'd think I'd be talking about lunch ladies. But no, I'm talking about the singer.
Hell!
Boy, she really got around with a lot of those A-list bands.
She even went on tour with Pat Benatar in 1983.
Because hell is for children. Hell no!
Did she ever win a Grammy?
If she would for any of these, it'd be for the Lizzo one.
I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Hell no!
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is a professor of political science emeritus at California State University at Fullerton. Professor Barbara Stone, welcome.
Welcome back, John.
Thank you. Let's start out with Ms. Cecily Meyer Cruz here, because it used to be in the old days, if you were a union and you were on strike and you wanted to prove to your employer, you wanted to prove to management that you really meant business and you wanted to bring in the muscle, you brought in the Teamsters, because it was the Teamsters that everyone was afraid of. And when Jimmy Hoffa was involved, that got your attention. But now it's not the Teamsters that are considered to be the muscle. It's the teachers. And now that AFTRA, SAG, and the WGA are both on strike, and they want to prove to Disney and Paramount and the rest of them that they mean business, who do they bring in but Cecily Meyer Cruz and the teachers?
Well, now, let me add one little thing in there. We think they brought her in. She may just have volunteered there. Seriously, because the woman is clearly drunk on the publicity. And I actually think that she does their cause virtually no good because, yeah, she's a powerful, UTLA is a powerful union, but their power derives from the fact that they elect their bosses, okay? It's union money that gets those trustees and who then appoint the superintendent, who then appoint the principals and all that. They control the people who make the decisions that govern their contracts. The writers and the actors do not control the people who run Disney and those other companies. So the model doesn't work, I don't think. And you mentioned the Teamsters. The Teamsters would have influence on those people, but the teachers don't. I honestly think it's her making it up. And look, here I am powerful. I am also shrieky, and that's fine. Everybody, I mean, she's actually in many ways more annoying than Kamala, and that's difficult. But the bottom, when you come out of it, I think this is just for show for her, and probably won't have nearly the impact people think.
One of the things that she did, which you don't typically see among unions, particularly education unions, is that her membership went on strike not because they were in a dispute with management, but because the classified employees were in a dispute with management, and they wanted to show solidarity. And they brought the district and Carvalho to their knees by going on strike with their classified brethren, and that was enough to get it over the finish line. Could you see a scenario where she's so punch drunk on power that she says if the Hollywood execs don't give in to AFTRA, SAG, and the WGA, that she'll shut the schools down in solidarity?
I would like to say, come on, even she's not that stupid, but we live in a state where they're about to try to legalize psychedelic mushrooms, and you can go to Santa Monica to LA County run places to get drugs and paraphernalia. So it's a crazy enough place that she might. And then somebody should march in and go, hey, teachers, this is what your union dues are going for. And by the way, Disney still wouldn't care. Why remotely would Disney care if LA Unified didn't open? So they have their own problems. So if that happens, John, notice I didn't say, come on, nobody's that stupid, because I'm not sure I believe that. But the sight of what would go on, oh my Lord, you want to talk about a totally dysfunctional area. But I guess we're pretty close to it already.
Are we finally getting to a point to where they're pushing too far? And I say this because there was a public outcry recently over a couple of different things. One was they wanted to increase the penalties against those who traffic children for the purposes of pimping them out for sex. And the Democrats killed the legislation. And even the left-wing editorial boards for the newspapers jumped all over them. And people showed up to Sacramento screaming and yelling. And they got the attention of the new speaker. And they eventually had to put something through. I believe the same thing will likely happen with fentanyl. They killed legislation that would increase the penalties for dealing fentanyl, and they received a lot of blowback for that. I would imagine that there will be some kind of legislation that comes through at some point because they don't want the negative attention that all of that attracted. You mentioned the psychedelics. That could be coming to a ballot near you. And then we have the teachers going on strike left, right, and center. Have they finally gotten to the point to where they've pushed too far, or are they going to just keep pushing and we haven't gotten anywhere close to the cliff yet?
My belief is in general that they're going to keep pushing, and no, we're not anywhere near the cliff. I hope I'm wrong. Now, the specifics you just brought up, I don't think that was because the legislature suddenly discovered, people don't like this. That Assembly Public Safety Committee isn't going to enhance penalties for anything, and they're not going to make anything in particular a strike because, after all, it fills the jails too much and affects people of color. I honestly believe, but I cannot prove this. But what happened is, bless his heart, Gavin Newsom is running for president. And Gavin Newsom is a liberal Democrat, but there are things that can become public and go on in the state that would make him look really, really bad when he runs for president either next year or 4 years after that. Some of the stuff I read indicated was that Gavin's the one, believe it or not, who grabbed the new Speaker of the Assembly, and they went in and leaned all over that committee after the committee had already voted to kill the bill. So if there's any hope, it's not that people are seeing the light. It's that some stuff is so nuts even Gavin can't live with it, and he still has some influence.
Scott Wiener is the state senator from San Francisco. A lot of these bad ideas come from his office, and he runs the Public Safety Committee in the California Senate. It is widely believed that Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, is going to resign after this term, or maybe run for one more and then resign after winning, so there's a special election. He is already up and running for that seat, saying that if she retires, he is ready to go, and he is raising money hand over fist. He believes that attracting this kind of attention is good for his political career in San Francisco, but all of it seems very bad for Gavin Newsom and his national prospects. What do you think Nancy is going to do? Do you think she's going to try to protect Gavin by sticking around? Do you think what Gavin wants is irrelevant to her? Do you think she would be comfortable with Scott Wiener taking over her seat and not someone like, her daughter?
Actually, that latter is a good point. If she runs again, it will be because of that, I think. You've been gone, right?
Oh yeah.
So you missed the more exciting parts of Scott Wiener. Last week, I guess, the boy put up a video on TikTok because we all know, as you mentioned earlier, that the Barbie movie is the big event right now. And I guess what he did was post a video on TikTok of himself riding Bart, wearing a pair of hot pink stilettos, I'm not making this up, and saying, did someone say Bartby? His excuse for that was he was raising support for Bart. This guy's a nut. But you're right. Every bad idea on the social side seems to come out of him. Although, if you didn't see that, you also missed them that, bless their heart, the Assembly Democrat Caucus. Did you see them posting to TikTok that themselves as Barbies and Kens? Now, the latter fits because Ken's missing certain anatomical parts that make this all work. But these people are nuts. And it's laughable, but you put it together with the nut down in UTLA, and this state is just in real trouble.
Well, let's shift gears for a second and talk about the GOP side of the aisle. There's a fight going on right now within the California Republican Party about how delegates will be allocated in the 2024 primary. Typically, we vote in June. We're one of the last states to vote, and we don't have a lot of influence in the early part of the primary, but we, in theory, could come in with a knockout blow if there is a contested primary that marches on into the summer. We decided that that leaves us out of the say, so we wanted to move our primary up to March. And because of that, according to some in the party, they have to change the way they allocate the delegates. That's part of moving it up the calendar. I guess my first question is, what do you think gives us more influence? Voting in March, where you have to, I guess, distribute the delegates differently, or going in late in June with a winner-take-all where you can really land the knockout blow?
The problem with the latter thought, which is when we did it in June, is that by then, see, it's not just a matter of because we have all these delegates. California has more delegates to the Republican National Committee convention than anybody else. But because early voting has such an effect, there are no candidates left running by the time June comes. So we can have a knockout blow, but there's only one person in the race by then. The last time that worked and there was a knockout blow was 1964 when Goldwater beat Rockefeller. So that's not likely to happen. What has happened over the years, because we've moved it up to March before as a state thinking we'd count, and people still were dropping out after the first 2 or 3 primaries, and that could still happen. But the one thing that goes on is that, I guess I look at it, if candidates stay in the race and if we get to California, probably we potentially have more influence and attract more attention by doing it the way we have to do it now, which is proportionately dividing the vote. John, I think I'm telling you the truth that it's 3 delegates from each congressional district, 10 delegates to whoever wins statewide, and then there are 3 separate people who are our state officials. We actually, by doing it that way, we make it so that more candidates can see it in their interest to campaign in at least certain parts of the state. We're big. We're expensive. And if it's winner take all and you see someone has 30% and no one else has over 15, you go, well, why should I spend money in California? That's always been our problem. If you see now someone has 30 and a couple of people are like 15 and 12, it's worth those 15 and 12 campaigning, particularly in certain districts. So I think we potentially come out way ahead doing it this way, as long as candidates stay in the race.
And given the scenario that you just described, then the most Republican district in the state, let's say Kevin McCarthy's in Bakersfield, has the same number of delegates as Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco, where you could fit all the Republicans in a phone booth. So if you come to California and you're a Republican and you want to campaign in San Francisco and you want to talk to the 15 Republicans that live there, that's just as good of a use of your time as going to Bakersfield.
Yep. In fact, it's a much better use of your time. And in fact, depending on who you are and how brave you are, you go down and you Campaign in Maxine Waters District. Campaign in any of those really, really liberal Bay Area and then other places districts, because you can get some pretty good bang for your buck. And from California's point of view, we all want to matter, quote unquote, but you can't do it if people aren't campaigning here. And I think this makes it, well, let's put it this way. The Republican candidates are not very swift if they haven't figured this out.
The way I read it, it benefits Ron DeSantis because Trump is leading him statewide in the last poll I saw. And if Trump wins the state, it's winner take all. There's no point for DeSantis to come here. But It makes all the sense in the world for DeSantis to spend a lot of time in California if he can win in all kinds of places that are very blue, where not a lot of Republicans live or vote, but they know they don't like Donald Trump. He could walk away with more delegates than Trump after losing statewide.
Yep. And the other one, I'm not, because I'm not seeing the campaigning, I'm not willing to say, oh, everybody watch this. But the numbers came out, I guess, within the week over nationally. Now, it's nationally. Which ones had the most money at the end of the June reporting period? Nationwide, Donald Trump had more money than anybody. Second was Tim Scott. And third, DeSantis. So I don't know where that boy's going to spend his money, but you could see some interesting stuff then if you think about some of these areas. John, it could be really interesting. And just holding that thought, another reason for people to compete here, I believe I'm telling you the truth. I think any primary held before March 15th has to be proportional distribution of delegates. I think March 15th is the date that after that, these states can do winner take all. You talk about knockout votes. And one of those states is Florida. So I would think that would keep some people in the race if it can possibly be done. But this is just a wild scenario.
What do you make of Ron DeSantis' campaign so far? Because I am someone who's predisposed to like him in every imaginable way. And I think a lot of people who are Republicans, who live in blue states, whose states were shut down all through COVID, the schools were shut down, the economy was shut down, and they told us that that's what the science dictated that they do, and there was no other alternative. And Florida proved that there was an alternative, and the alternative worked just fine. I look at Florida and I look at Ron DeSantis as a beacon of hope, as a beacon of light. That being said, I've been thoroughly unimpressed by his campaign so far. His campaign so far, to my eye, looks like Ted Cruz 2.0, where he's tried to reinvent himself as a culture warrior and get to the right of Donald Trump on every single subject. I don't think Donald Trump's political positions offend Republicans at all. I think most Republicans are with him on most subjects. The ones I talk to that don't like him think he's obnoxious. It's not his politics that they object to, it's his personality. If you're Ron DeSantis and you're the guy that kept your state open during COVID, you can say, the main difference between me and Trump is I would have fired Fauci and I wouldn't have leaned on the states to shut down when that's what Birx and Fauci were telling him to do. Outside of that, we see the world pretty similarly. But that's not what he's doing. He is getting to the right of him on every single subject, and I think he's leaving a lot of people behind.
You know, I've tried to, I've tried to think this through because there was huge promise early, and this was nothing DeSantis could do anything about. He could not do a thing while the Florida legislature was in session, partly because the existing Florida law said that if he did begin running for another office, he had to give up the governorship. So he had to wait till that played out. During that time period, everybody is now forgetting that Donald Trump's campaign ran somewhere between $15 and $20 million in anti-DeSantis ads all over the country. And so he took a huge beating in that. By the way, the Trump people were smart to do that. And DeSantis at that point didn't have any choice. So that's what you're left with when then you go. DeSantis is a legitimate culture warrior, but I agree with you. I don't think that's what he had to sell, particularly if they're going to go after Trump. Trump was out there leaning all over Brian Kemp and Ron DeSantis for keeping their states open. It's a place they could draw a real clear line. Maybe you know more than I do. When I see it, I see the people running the DeSantis campaign, and particularly their Independent Expenditure Committee, all seem to be quite hard right, formerly Trump people. And so that seems to be their vision. That's what they're doing. But I happen to agree with you. I think it hurt him tremendously.
Well, the guy that runs the super PAC is a guy by the name of Jeff Rowe, who ran Ted Cruz's operation last time around.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah. A lot of the people I know who are in the DeSantis camp are former Ted Cruz people, and it seems like they're the ones that are calling the shots. Last question before you go. Ron DeSantis recently did an interview with CNN. It was his first interview with CNN in a very long time. I still have a bunch of friends that work over there. They tell me they reach out to him all the time, and his office says, essentially, we've received your request. We'll get back to you if we have an interest. And they don't do CNN. They don't do the networks. He pretty much does Newsmax, Fox Business, and One America and talk radio. But if you're running for president, you have to talk to people outside of that population. I can't imagine why any candidate running for office wouldn't want to go on the Today Show, or wouldn't want to go on Good Morning America, or wouldn't want to go on some platform that has incredible reach that may not necessarily be ideologically aligned with you, but might expose you and your ideas to people who haven't heard them before. Your thoughts on their strategy?
It stinks. Let me add one little bit, because I agree with virtually everything you just said. You could interpret, though I don't know that it's true, that these people don't have enough faith in their candidate. Ron DeSantis is not Mr. Sparkling Personality. He'll admit that. But Ron DeSantis, as far as I can tell, knows more about the various issues out there, and I don't care whether it's the military, social, cultural things, financial things. He knows more about it than any of the other candidates, and he's actually very articulate. So CNN goes after him. Believe me, he can take care of himself. And I think his people are making quite an error that way. And I'm sure in their mind as well, after the primary, we'll do it. Well, honey, you got to get through the primary first. And there are Republicans who look at CNN, not just Fox. And anyhow, I agree with you.
Professor Barbara Stone, Professor of Political Science Emeritus at California State University at Fullerton. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Good to have you home, John. Bye-bye.
Thank you. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if, like me, you were on vacation last week and you want to go back and listen to what Randy had to say, Randy, that's easy to do.
That's right. Go to KBC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all of the episodes, including the 12 o'clock hour on Friday, where we took calls on what we should change the music that's blasting out the homeless at the Metro station to. A topic that was apparently so offensive, our 1 o'clock guest canceled.
We haven't had that happen in a while.
Oh, it cracked me up, though.
Every once in a while, we like to check in with our worthless district attorney, George Gascon, because, well, if someone's going to create so much damage in Los Angeles County, you should probably pay attention.
Quite frankly.
Particularly when they tell you that destroying the county is their intention.
We got some wobbly knees allies.
Oh, by the way, when you were gone, Pam Price gave us one.
Quite frankly.
If you think, by the way, that George Gascon is the worst district attorney in the state, you'd be wrong. It's actually that woman.
And she is now facing a recall.
Good for the people of Alameda County.
We tried to recall George Gascon. Didn't work out too great. But the good news is he's up for re-election next year no matter what.
And because of that, his advisors are telling him to make sure that he connects with the kids because the youth vote is what could, in theory, save him.
That's why he has brought back season 2 of Ask the DA, TikTok videos where he answers readers' questions. And this time they've upgraded it to where they're actually posting what the question is. Well, somebody asked George Gascon, one of your directives on day 1 was prohibiting filing charges of resisting, delaying, or obstructing a police officer unless the person is actually physically harming them. So resisting arrest is no longer a crime in George Gascon's Los Angeles County. So this reader wanted to know, don't you think that makes the job of a police officer more dangerous? Are you ready for Gascon's answer of why he believes you should not be charged with the crime for resisting or obstructing a police officer?
I love that even when they're trying to cook up one of these crooked sorts of TikTok Q&As, even those questions are hostile.
I don't think there's anyone left asking softballs. Here we go.
This is a great question.
No, it's not.
This is a great question. For background.
Also, did he put an extra syllable in question?
It sounded like there was a lasso at the beginning.
Oh yeah, that's the swipe up noise.
This is a great question.
Question. Or maybe he's an equestrian? Maybe I have this totally confused.
He does represent Santa Anita.
This is a great question. For background, Penal Code 148A, commonly referred to as resisting arrest, is the misdemeanor that applies to any conduct that resists, delays, or obstructs a peace officer in the course of their official duties.
Oh, sorry, Gascon. It's hard to pay attention to you with those smooth, jazzy hip-hop vibes.
It sounds like 1970s porno music.
Delayed or obstruct.
Well, I don't want to know what he does when he thinks about not charging criminals.
I think you're getting warm.
Delayed or obstructs a peace officer in the course of their official duties. Law enforcement risks their lives every day to keep our communities safe. As you pointed out, as a former police officer for almost 30 years, I have first-hand experience with both making arrests and the application of this law.
And yet you still want to make it harder for cops to do their job.
Boy, that is actually steroid-level stupidity.
As a blanket rule, it could be used inappropriately to apply to a host of conduct that doesn't threaten the life or safety of the officer conducting the arrest. My goal in including
So it doesn't matter if they're causing a disturbance, they're resisting a police officer, as long as they don't punch the police officer in the face, it's not a crime.
This is all going back to what we talked to Barbara Stone about, which is that if you put people in jail for resisting arrest, in his mind, it would disproportionately impact people of color.
As a blanket rule.
This is why in L.A. County, the car chases last for an hour and a half, and as soon as they get into Ventura County, the car chase is over.
As a blanket rule, it could be used inappropriately to apply to a host of conduct that doesn't threaten the life or safety of the officer conducting the arrest. My goal in including 148.8 among the misdemeanors we no longer take a blanket approach to was to be...
No, that means that you do not file and you do not let your deputies file. You're the one who made a blanket approach to say, here are a whole bunch of categories of crimes that we're not going to take seriously.
And this is why your employees hate you.
And I love right under the question on the Instagram post, because I don't actually have TikTok, but they repost these on Insta. It says, note, LADA's misdemeanor policy only applies in the area of LA County that they don't have their own city prosecutor. So that garbled nonsense where, hey, it doesn't apply in the actual city of Los Angeles because they have a city attorney. But guess what? Of the 88 cities in LA County, 77 of them are represented by George Gascon when it comes to misdemeanors. So it's a big freaking deal.
Oh, joy.
My goal in including 148.8 among the misdemeanors we no longer take a blanket approach to was to be more thoughtful in how we charge these crimes.
I don't know. It's pretty open and shut. You either complied with the police officer or you did not, and you caused a ruckus.
And didn't he mean these? How we charge this crimes?
To be more thoughtful in how we charge these crimes. All misdemeanors.
Well, I don't know if you have to graduate, language arts to become a DA. You don't even need to be an attorney, apparently.
Was he educated at LAUSD too?
Actually, I think he was. He grew up in Cudahy.
That would explain a lot.
All misdemeanors outlined in my special directives include deviations and exceptions. For example,
Then why are they blanket policies that you had to institute on day one?
And I think he just said example.
all misdemeanors outlined in my special directives include deviations and exceptions. For example,
They could have done this in a second take.
Is this just the Wheel of Fortune where he buys vowels? I don't like that A. Let's replace it with an E. Let's go. Vanna, come on.
For example, if someone poses identifiable and continuing threat to another individual, or if there exists another circumstance or similar gravity, any misdemeanor listed in the misdemeanor policy could be charged. In the case,
Then why have the policy? Why not let the deputy district attorneys who do this for a living judge whether something goes up to the level of misdemeanor? Then on day one, saying things like making criminal threats, trespassing, prostitution, and resisting arrest are no longer crimes.
He fundamentally believes that the deputy DAs that work for him and the cops are the real criminals, and the people who are resisting arrest, they're the victims.
in the case of Penal Code 148A, there are 3 additional exceptions. 1. If the person repeats the offense within 24 months.
So if they resist arrest twice, then we take it seriously.
How about a hat trick?
2. If the charge would be filed in connection with another offense. Or 3. If there is actual physical force used against the peace officer. While physical force is
So we want the people to be unruly. We want the people to resist arrest. But as soon as they punch an officer in the face, then we might do something about it. Except for assault on a peace officer. It used to be a felony, and now it's a misdemeanor thanks to George Gascon in Prop 47.
Well, and what he's doing is he's making it so that the cops have to get involved in more dangerous situations rather than less. Because if the cops have to use force because the person is resisting arrest and the cop does something that results in the individual being injured, then he's going to go after the cop.
While physical force is one condition, it's not the only exception. And if the person is already being arrested for another offense, which is generally the case of a person running away, in your example, it wouldn't apply. It simply ensures that the community is not subject to unnecessary charges simply by engaging with or choosing not to engage with law enforcement.
Now, that's not how it works.
Was this guy born yesterday?
Imagine you get pulled over, you roll down your window, and you say, sorry, officer, George Gascon said that I can choose not to engage with you, so I'm just going to go on my merry way.
Well, then, go ahead. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Enjoy the sunshine.
We got some wobbly knees allies.
I don't know why it's true, but it just is. Ever since I was put on the air at this radio station many moons ago, people let their hair down when they're guests or callers on this show, and they use words that the FCC will not allow to go out over the airwaves. Oh, hello. And because of that, Randy, who runs the dumb button, has to pay very close attention because sometimes it comes from people you wouldn't expect it from.
That's right, like former hosts on this radio station.
Well, John, as I've told you before, unless Joe Biden can can screw up a mirror.
Larry!
Larry!
You're on the freaking radio!
I said screw up.
No, he didn't.
Tom McClintock swore. We've had so many guests use words. Who was it? Ann Coulter described something that we couldn't even bleep.
Yeah, I'm not even saving that one for posterity. But, Johnny, while you were gone, it happened from a very unexpected place. Fox 11's Alex Michelson blasted away.
It doesn't matter who you send there, that it's all or sorry. Yeah. And they don't. And so that I'm like Larry Elder on your show.
Now, I need to find this clip during the commercial break, but Alex Michelson, he does hits on a whole bunch of radio stations to promote The Issue Is. He went on with Conway at KFI, and Conway gave him crap for that. So I got to find that.
We mentioned before that Alex Michelson of Fox 11 let his hair down on this program last week when Randy was guest hosting. And Randy, you found out that he had his chops busted over it on another radio show.
That's right. This is what he said last Monday. And by the way, we love Alex, and he did this on his day off. So it was just so unexpected and funny.
It doesn't matter who you send there, that it's all bull. Or, sorry.
So that happened. And then on Friday, he does a regular hit with my buddy and former KABC employee for the tune of 3 whole days, Tim Conway Jr. at KFI.
Buddy, what's going on with you?
What do you mean?
Well, you just used the B word. You felt very comfortable throwing that on the air. I get that. But then I heard you on another radio station use the F word this week.
I did not use the F word. I used the S word.
Oh, the S word. Okay.
I said BS, but I said it out loud. I would not use the F word. No, that was Larry Elder was on that radio station.
That's right.
He used the F word.
Okay.
I am a professional.
I get you and Larry Elder mixed up.
So I guess the moral of this story is I got to stop texting people this Larry Elder clip.
Well, John, as I've told you before, unless Joe Biden can can screw up a mirror.
Larry,
you're on the freaking radio.
I said screw up.
Never gets old, does it? We've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Get out of my way.